Okay, I think we're ready to start. Um, just realized I hadn't opened up unit 3, so you can see it. So I just opened up unit 3. So make sure you might have to reload your page to see unit 3 for this. So we'll be again doing unit 3 this week. We don't have a guest speaker signed up this week. We have one set up for next week here. Originally I was trying to have Securian come in because I thought Securian would be at the business career fair at UMD this week. But Securian is doing more internships in October, it looks like, rather than September. It used to be that a lot of the companies would open up internships in October, not September, but UMD moved a bunch of their career fairs up earlier, and so some of the companies have switched, like DigiKey, but some of them are still following this October timeframe. So we're in touch with Securian, and we'll let you know when, and we'll have a couple guest speakers from Securian in this class too later on. That's why we didn't have any guest speakers this week, but we'll have Matt next week from Target talking to us. Let's look at unit 3 then. We're not going to, well, again, we're still going to cover the introduction to Scrum, and we'll talk a little bit about Kanban today for this. And then one of the goals is to make sure we have our environment set up correctly and then start using GitHub and working with GitHub in different ways. We will have a little sample we'll do today in class. We'll probably try to get started a little bit on this participation sample here today in class. And then we have kind of a sprint simulation where you'll work in teams to set this up. I have it hidden right now, the assignment, because I want to update it. It doesn't require you to use what are called branches working with teams, but I really want to show you and get you thinking about branches at times, especially when you're working with a team there. And so I'm just going to mod the assignment a little bit to require and show you, but that also requires some new videos showing how to use branches. So I'll try to update that. So let's jump into the textbook first, and then we'll get back to, we'll go to source control and Visual Studio and VS Code and look at those here. So again, the first couple chapters here are on Introduction to Scrum and Kanban. And then next week, we'll start this part 2, the foundations. We'll start talking about dependencies and layering and get into interfaces and design patterns with interfaces here. So that'll be next week. But this week, we talked about Scrum. We went through the Scrum process here. We talked about sprints and how sprints work. So it's just a little smaller. We talked about sprints. We talked about a Scrum board and how the Scrum board will work. And today we'll also talk a little bit about a Kanban board and how that will work and compare it a little bit to this and see some of the similarities between the two. It'll be interesting to talk to our speakers and hear what most of them, I would guess, are using Agile methodologies. Not everyone uses Agile, so it'll be interesting to hear. And it'll be interesting to hear if they, which of these aspects they actually implement here. We talked about how in my mind, the key kind of part of this is a story, a user story, and that can have aspects of tasks. We might break it down to a defect we're fixing or technical debt here. Sometimes these are grouped together in features. And again, Steve from DigiKey was talking about that they work with stories, features, and actually releases of this sort of stuff. We've written some user stories as some user role. I want to do something, so I can do this. And we talked about then trying to measure these user stories and how big they are. We talked about our Scrum board and how we have these vertical lines. We might have a backlog, an in progress, a QA, and a done section. And we'll talk a little bit about that again, these swim lanes when we get to Kanban here. And I won't cover too much in Kanban, but I just wanted to kind of introduce it and talk a little bit about it here. We talked about technical debt here. We talked about points, story points, and how you can graph things out in different ways. We talked about this burn down chart that you want to be burning, basically you want to commit stuff or finish up stuff and completing story points as like in this way, in this example, a 2-week sprint goes down. And then you can often track your progress against this burn down chart here. And then we can also look at the features, what we've been adding over a longer time period for this. So I talked about sprints, and this sprints is something that's different between Scrum and Kanban. That Scrum is very focused on these 2-week sprints. I guess it can be 1 to 4 weeks, but 2 weeks is pretty industry standard here for this. And how we work through the sprints. They also work with a daily Scrum, and it's interesting talking to them. A daily stand-up. And this is actually done quite frequently. You'd think it wouldn't, but it's actually, I see a lot of, even with, like Steve was talking about his remote team where they have people in India and in the Twin Cities and in Thief River Falls, and they all get together for a daily stand-up. It might be different times of day, depending on where you are globally, but you get together and you just do a quick update on how everyone's doing here. The sprint retrospective is also done a lot, where again, when you finish a sprint, you talk about what went well and what went badly for this. And in my mind, this seems like a horrible waste of time. I'm not very good at reflections and that sort of stuff, but people have done this. I mean, I'm not a Scrum Master. I don't manage this, things like that. People who do project management talk about how this is a very important and useful thing, and when you do it, you actually gain a lot from it. Brandon, for example, he's a project manager. He's very good at doing retrospectives and reflections and making them useful, and so that next sprint you avoid the problems or the issues that you had in the previous sprints here. Okay, so that's kind of the what we were talking about as far as Scrum goes. Let's talk a little bit about comparing this to Kanban. So again, this is just another agile methodology. Both of these are relatively new. What do I mean by relatively new? They're about maybe as old as you are, not old like me. So I still consider you young. So this is, if you're young, these methods are also kind of young. So again, as far as agile goes, there'll be old developers like me out there who remember the before days, the days before we did agile here. And so Scrum or Kanban, again, these are these newer modern ways of developing software, and a lot of places are using them here. I'm gonna kick this up in font here. So in some ways, I view Kanban, and again, I'm not an expert on Kanban, and we should talk to some of our speakers on what they think of Kanban if they're using it. Kanban is more of a flexible way of managing a project, where I see Scrum is kind of set in specific ways: sprints, 2-week sprints, stand-ups, storyboards, these swim lanes commonly done. Kanban seems to be a little more what I would think is flexible here. So again, a lot of it surrounds this Kanban board, which again is very much like a Scrum board. Initially, you can think of things you have to do, doing, and done sort of stuff. But we're going to expand on that here for this. And again, they talk about Trello being a popular way of setting up and running these boards here. And again, what they suggest first you do is look at, before you adopt Kanban, what are your current processes? How are you setting it up? And you create swim lanes for your current process. And then you try to modify those into a new process. And often you look at things and you may break some of these processes up into sub-processes. So like when you're coding, one of the process, when you're implementing your code, you might have code when you're actually coding, and then move these into development complete before they go on to testing here. You do some analysis. I mean, system analysis and design, we really kind of skip over that a lot in Scrum, where you're trying to analyze a problem, figure out and design a solution to a problem. In Scrum, we tend to just do it and not spend time here. Here we have often a whole phase maybe designed to analyze a problem. Here, again, we still are going to have stuff, features moving through these areas for this. So again, we can have these little stories or these features that move through our Kanban board in some ways. And then we talk again about when is something done. Now, like with coding, you might be pretty clear on when it's done. You've completed it and you've unit tested it. It's ready to move on here. But like when you're doing analysis or something like that, or verifying, testing, what is done there. So we have some definitions of what done is in the different areas here. We don't necessarily have these weekly or these sprints. So Kanban can work without sprints, where you do kind of just a continuous analysis. You are just always building and delivering stuff. And then maybe at some point you are saying, okay, I want to group these together into a delivery of some sort of this. So you don't necessarily have this time crunch with a sprint every 2 weeks and a delivery every 2 weeks from this stuff. You can be continually moving things around here. So that's kind of what Kanban is. It's very similar, I would say, to Scrum, but again, often we maybe have a more intricate board of processes, more maybe analysis in there, and more of a continuous flow than a cyclic sprint sort of stuff here for this. And again, a lot of times I see people implementing a combination of these two. They might do like more of a Kanban board where more decent, more analysis, but and maybe not the 2-week sprints, but maybe the daily stand-ups. Maybe they'll steal that from Scrum here, or they might not do the daily stand-ups and they'll do something else, and then they'll do the they'll do the sprints instead. Has anyone, so doing internships, has anyone here done Kanban or Scrum? So Miles, what did you do?
We do kind of Scrumban and Kanban.
So combine. And where was that, at the Chicky? Yeah, okay. So what would you say, what features would you say you took from? So did you do daily stand-ups?
Yeah.
Yep. And you have sprints?
Yeah.
Yep. And then, but you had a board.
Yeah. And then there was there's like the backlog and then in development doing, development done,
Uh-huh,
testers, grab from development done to test doing, test done. Then production.
right, okay,
Release it.
yeah. Right. Anyone else been working on this? Or to work?
Very similar to what he said,
Okay,
down in St. Paul.
St. Paul?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were they calling it Scrum? Were they calling it Kanban, or did they just call it Agile, or?
Just agile, I think.
Okay,
We
right.
had stand-ups, but we
Uh-huh.
also had the Kanban board,
okay, so you had a Kanban board, you had daily stand-up
Yeah.
sprints?
sprints, yeah.
Yep, 2 week sprints, yep, okay. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how they would, anyone else? Online? There's a couple people online. Okay, so again, we just want to talk about that, and we'll be doing that, and we'll do a sample one this week with GitHub. One of the things that ties a lot into this is just source control, and we want to really get you used to using source control here. So next we're going to jump into source control a little bit more. So I'm going to go back to the unit here. And I'm going to click on this source control with Git and GitHub and talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about Git in GitHub. So Git is software that runs on your computer that manages, that tracks changes to your local code and can kind of keep track of changes to your local code and tracks each update and what files were. It's kind of like, you know, yeah, version control or something like that locally here. So Git is kind of runs on your computer, and you use some computers will have Git installed. A lot of Linux machines do, but a lot of times you have to install for. So if you have a Mac OS or a Windows, you might have to install Git here. So we will have in the labs we have Git installed for this. But again, on your own computer, you may have to install Git. Now, Git is usually just command line driven. So you would bring up a terminal, maybe a command prompt. And you type in Git commands here, like git clone something. So it's trying to find Git is trying to find this something and it doesn't know what you're talking about here. So again, you type in these commands on a command line, often with Git. Now, there are user interfaces built into this that you can use. So we have, what do we have? GitHub desktop here, which will integrate with Git and GitHub here also. So sometimes you'll have that. And now most development environments will have source control, including Git available. Now there are other alternatives to Git here, but we'll be using Git. So Git is on your local machine. GitHub is a website, right? So if I go to GitHub, it's a website. I have my repositories on the website here. And it's a shared spot to put to store repositories and store the code on the internet. So again, for a single developer, why do you need that? Well, let's just look at you. You would be developing in the lab here, and then you'd be going home and you might be developing on your home computer. We used to carry around floppy disks, and then we compared these USB drives. We used to carry on these little USB drives, and every students would come and plug those in the computer. We'd save them onto the little USB drive. You'd bring them home. You'd plug into the USB drive, and you'd open it up. Everything was on your USB drive at some point. But now we put everything on the cloud. So here, if you work on your project, you'll push it up to GitHub. It'll be stored in the cloud. Then you get home and you'll download it. You'll pull it down from GitHub to your local machine. So GitHub is like our cloud storage for this. It's kind of like Google Docs in some ways, if you think of that, where you're working with something out there. But the one thing that's kind of different is that with Google Docs, it's just in the cloud. There's not necessarily a local copy. Here, there'll be a local copy and a cloud-based copy, and you have to sync them up together here. So you want to make sure you have a GitHub login if you don't already. So if you go to GitHub, you should be able to log in here. And then you should be able to log in to this. Now there's you can create a student. Has anyone tried this semester trying to create a student account? And how did that go? Did everyone, I think everyone here might already have had a GitHub account there. So again, we've had some issues where if you had to prove you're a student. So you can create a student account or just create a normal account on GitHub. That's fine here. So let's talk a little bit about this. So let's say we're on GitHub, and well, let's first look at adding a project to GitHub. So I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to do this for Visual Studio first here. So one of the things I'm trying to work with in this class is we used to just use Visual Studio, but for Macs, Visual Studio is not available anymore. So there's VS Code here. So I'm trying to set this up so we can use both Visual Studio and VS Code here, and VS Code both for Windows and the Mac. So I'll try to include some videos about this. I've just got my Mac up and running in my office and Visual Code installed and stuff, and I just started recording videos with it yesterday. So I'll start posting some of those up here too. But let's start in Visual Studio. So I'm just going to create a new project using one of the templates here. So I'm just going to do a new console project. Give it some name. And again, it's just a simple project, says hello world, something like that. It just has one file in it. So this is my project again, and it is on my local folder here. So I look at my local folder here. It will be stored. I should have looked at where it's being stored. I think it's in sources. Yeah. So if I look at my file explorer and I go to C users and in my name T Gibbons, it's in sources, repos, and here's this sample project. So within that project is a solution file, the SLN file. And again, if I wanted to open up, that's where I'd open up. I could actually double click on that. And then there's a folder associated with that for the project. And then the code is inside there. And there's also a bin and an object folder. When you compile it, it fills up these files. For that, and again, when you try to email those and things, there are executables and files like that in the bin and the OJ object folders, which cause trouble. And so if you're ever trying to work with a project, trying to email it or whatever, you can delete the bin and the object files, because when you compile, those are automatically recreated there. And again, Gmail will complain often about those. Okay, but this is our file here. Now, it doesn't have any, it's not in Git, or in no way is it a Git project. So if I want to make that a Git project, I want to enable some source control here. So I want to go to my project here, and then I want to, look at source control for this. Oh yeah, and they've changed this in Visual Studio. This used to be called source control. Now it's just Git control here, at least in mine. So it just wants to do Git up here. So if you don't see the Git command, you'll see a source control command, and you have to say enable Git, and then I'll switch the source control file to a Git menu option for this. But I'm going to initially just create a Git repository here so that this becomes as Git to this. So I'm going to say create it, do it on my local path. There's something called a git ignore file. I'm going to leave that as the default for Visual Studio. I can specify a license. I can have it add a README. I'm going to add that here. And then if I want to log into GitHub, I can sign in to GitHub here for this. And so I'm going to click on this stuff to sign in. I'll just warn you, the GitHub integration, GitHub has really kicked up in the last 2 years, their security as far as logging in and that sort of stuff. And so that's broken a lot of these tools as far as this account stuff goes in. So I'm going to try to sign in with my GitHub account. Hopefully it'll just bring up a window, it'll sign you in, or you may have to sign into GitHub here, and then you'll go back here and it'll have you logged in. If not, we'll have to work on other ways of doing this. So now I'm going to say create and push. It's going to create a GitHub repository locally, and then it's going to then create and push this to GitHub remotely here. So let's look at what that looks like. In my folder now, there's a couple of dot files, a .git ignore and .git attributes here. So this, whenever I see these, I know that this folder is protected by GitHub. So that it uses these folders to track all my changes that I make to these files. And git ignore, there are certain files here. Let's just open up git ignore, which it will not upload to GitHub. So things like the debug and the release folders, the compile, the build folders, the .bin and .obj object folders, the .log files, all those are ignored and not uploaded to GitHub here. So there's a bunch of files that aren't uploaded to GitHub. And so it only is going to send the important source files that you need to build this stuff. So that GitHub. It also created this README file, which is what's displayed in GitHub. So if I look at that, that's just a simple README file here. And it's written in markup language. So not HTML, but markup, markdown. What's that language? So the same thing that like Colab stuff is written into. Okay. So that's there. Now, if I go, it should have also pushed this out to my repository. So if I go out to GitHub and look at my repositories, here's my sample console project. that was just updated a minute ago. Here's my README file right here. Here. And again, I can edit it. I can edit it there or here. This is one of the files that you can edit right in here. So this is my test file from Visual Studio. I did this in class. Okay. And a lot of GitHub projects, they'll display the console project here. They'll display the files, and underneath that, the README. And a lot of projects, this README will be quite elaborate and have good documentation of what this project is for this. If you are going to be putting a lot of your projects out there and you want employers to watch them, you probably want to have some nice, descriptive README files here. But again, I can see the files here. I can also go in here and look at the code. Here's my code for this project here. Right. So now if I go in and make a change here, let's do another write line. So I'm going to do console write line. Adding a line in Visual Studio. Added this line. And again, now I want to save that up there to GitHub here. Now, there'll be this Git solution here. I thought there's also you can also display the GitHub window over here. So I'm going to just see where that is. Why isn't that showing up? Right. Okay, so I went to view Git changes because I like to have this window up here. So I have the Solution Explorer on one tab and Git changes on another tab over here. So I like that here. So I've done some changes here. In my Solution Explorer, it will it'll like have a check here, a red check saying that you've done some edits and you haven't committed those yet or saved those here. If I go to, a red check just means it hasn't been saved or committed. And here, it'll list off all my files. Program.cs is the only file that's been changed here. So I can try to update that. So whenever I commit is kind of like a save, and it saves it locally. So I can try to commit this locally here. Added a line and comment. So I have to have some title for my commit here. And then I can save these changes. Now it's giving me this is where I configure your username and email address before committing changes. So here's my username. So I think I want this the same as my GitHub username, which is this tgibbons.css. So I'm going to switch this around, tgibbons.css. And I'm going to put in my correct email address. Okay. So now I've typed in here and I can commit these. I can also commit and push. I'm just going to do a commit first to show you that. Now, it says your file hasn't been saved. Do you want to save it first? And again, I see a little star there. So yes, I want to save and then commit. Here. So now it's saved the files and committed here. So locally, if I go in here and look at my code, that file will have the new additions to it. So it's saved and committed locally. But it's not saved to GitHub. It's not pushed to GitHub. So if I go out to GitHub, right, and I reload this and I look at this project, it has the old version here. And if I go here, it'll actually say that the last change has been 4 minutes ago when I edited this file for this. Okay. So now I want to commit, I want to push these values from my local machine up to GitHub here. So again, I want to do it says commit has been created locally here, but again, it hasn't been synced or pushed. So that'll give me a view of that, commit. And so now I want to push these up to GitHub. So I'm going to push the changes up to GitHub. So it likes to do what is called a sync, where it goes up to GitHub and get changes other people made at the same time, pulls those down and pushes them down here for this. So I'm going to do a pull then push for this, which is also just called a sync. So now it is gone out to GitHub, made sure there's no other changes that other people made, and then pulled any of those down and then pushed my changes up there. So now if I go here and I go to the code, right, the changes will be here. I think with a number of you, I mean, this should be very familiar. We've seen this in other places, this GitHub push and pull and stuff like that. And again, whenever I make changes, I can go over here. And again, that's why I like this GitHub window, this view GitHub changes. You can also do everything through this Git window. But again, if I want to do another commit here, and I usually then do my commit all and sync here at the same time, and it'll save the file, commit it, and push it, and sync, do a pull and push all at the same time for this. So again, when I usually do this, rather than just doing a commit and then doing a push, I switch this to commit and push at the same time, or commit and sync at the same time, so that then automatically the changes are pushed to GitHub. And again, let's say you go home and you want to get your changes, you open up your editor, it has the old versions, you would just go to git pull to pull the versions that any changes like that you made here to your other machine for this. I'm going to talk about Visual Studio. I mean, so in Visual Studio here, I'm just going to talk a little bit about VS Code and how that will work for this. So I'm going to run VS Code. So VS Code is a simpler kind of version of Visual Studio, simpler IDE for code editing here, but has some of the integration. So again, the Explorer here will show our different files, and this will be our source control sort of stuff that we can open. So again, initially, I'm just going to open a folder. Now, I can also, if there's a repository out there, I can just clone that repository originally. I'm just going to open a folder I'm gonna go find my sources, repos. Here's my project. I'm just gonna select that folder and open it up. As I trust the author here for this. And so now I'm in this view up here where I see my Explorer and I can see my program and I can edit this. So now I can add more code to this. Adding line from, let's say, VS Code. I'm going to add this development kit. I don't know why that wasn't installed here. Okay, so I've added a line or two here, modified this. Now in VS Code, this is the source control window here. And so I can commit things. So I can enter my command and hit my message updated from the from code. Now the commit isn't available here, and the reason why is that I haven't actually saved this file yet. So in Visual Studio, it tracks your changes even if you haven't saved the file. It will save the file automatically. In VS Code, I actually save the files. I have to go over here and hit save. I'm just doing a Control S. And now when I go to source control, there's one change. It shows it. And so now I can, the commit button is then available. So I can commit. Now, and again, I can do a commit and push if I want also. So I'm going to do that, or commit and sync. And so I'm just, it says, do you want to start, commit locally and then sync them up? So I'm going to say yes. And it's pushing to what is called the master branch. And we'll talk more about branches on Thursday. Now, it also is going to ask me, do I want to run Visual Studio a fetch periodically? What that'll do is go out and every so often get any changes that others have made there. I'm not going to do that because I'm the only one working on this project here. So I'm not going to have it do that. So now it's sent that out there. So if I go to my GitHub project here and I look at this and I reload the page, it'll have my changes from VS Code in there. And if I run Visual Studio now, go to my project, when I opened it, it did a fetch automatically and grabbed those code. And if it didn't, again, I can just do a pull to pull any changes on the current branch down here. Okay, so that's all we're using VS Code. So let's have you try this out on a sample project. Now, how do we do this in class here? So GitHub has a special area called GitHub Classroom. So I, as your instructor, log into GitHub Classroom. I create courses. I create assignments here. And then with an assignment, I give it an initial code for that assignment. And then there's what is called an invite link. And I give you that invite link. And so if you go here, if you go under Unit 3, source control, and you go down here, this is actually, this sample assignment is actually a GitHub Classroom sample assignment. So when you click on that, you have to accept the classroom assignment. I've already done that, and now it might have to copy the assignment to get it ready for you. It might take 30 seconds for that to happen, but eventually it'll create your own GitHub repository. But it's your own in that I still have control over it. Okay, it's within my classroom. You edit that, but I can also see it for grading and stuff like that. So, and it's in my classroom environment here. So here's my GitHub. So it'll have a different kind of name to it. It'll be GitHub, and then this will be our classroom here, and then, or this will be my kind of area, and then there'll be this assignment here. And then you can edit it here. So again, now you have this URL, you want to copy that here. So again, you go here, you accept the assignment here, and then this is the link you want. You want that link, which is the same URL as this, but you need that URL here. So we copy that URL. I'm going to copy that URL. Now I'm going to go, let's do this in Visual Studio. Oops, I just closed. Let's do this in Visual Studio first here. Now, I can do a new repository. I can go file clone repository right away. File clone repository, and that'll work. I can also close this one. So I can go file, close this solution here. It'll close it and it'll bring back to this starting menu, and I can say clone a repository. So either way, I want to get to this clone repository menu. It'll ask for the repository location. I'm going to paste in the URL. So always the repository location is this GitHub URL here. And this is the path where it's going to save it here. So again, it saves it to sources, repo. I never like that. So I generally switch this to some other location. So I'm going to save it to documents, new folder. And I'm going to make a CIS 3285 folder here. And select that. So again, this is just where it's going to be saving that repository. And I'm going to say clone. And it'll then now copy all those files down and set this up. So. Now I'll just warn you that some of the, all the assignments currently are 2 years old and run off a different version of .NET and environments and stuff like that. And so I will try to go through all these projects and update them before you use them out there. I will not always remember. I remember as much as I can here. But so you'll see that.
Getting an error when I'm trying to accept the assignment in GitHub.
When you're trying to what?
Accept the assignment in GitHub.
Okay, and that's what Michael was, or I think Max said the same thing, right? It could not be created. The visibility of star code is out of sync with Classroom. May have recreated the assignment. Try and update the assignment. Okay, so let's see. Let me go into so this was the Unit 3 sample. So I'm going to go into GitHub Classroom. I need to find this assignment. Yeah, okay. So. Okay, try again. So usually I will create kind of a new updated assignment. I haven't done it for this sample assignment. So try that again. So yeah, and Max says he forked the repo, and we don't really want you to do that, because if you fork the repo, then I can't access your copy of it. So we want you to do it as the assignment. So now try to click on this sample assignment. Does that work now?
No.
Uh, Let's look and see. Maybe I wonder if the update changed. No. Changed. Okay, let me create a new assignment here. Uh, to well, let's just do it with this new assignment we just created. Okay. Just give me a quick sec. I'll create a new assignment because I'd like to make sure we get this working here. So whenever I log into GitHub nowadays, I have to use my phone to do to authenticate that. So okay, let's see. Let's see if this is now working. There, okay. Okay, so see if you can go in there and now see if you can get the new version of the assignment. So you should be able to click on it. It should bring it to this window and you should be able to accept the assignment. Are you, okay, are you logged into GitHub?
Where it worked this time.
It worked this time?
Refresh.
Refresh the page and then accept the page. So. Okay. So again, you should be able to have a URL here that you can then copy, go into VS Code and clone there. So you want this, eventually you want to get where you can see the files in GitHub. And this is the URL. It should be something like github.com/tgivenstudents CSS and then like CIS 3285 sample assignment or something like that. So I'm going to copy that. And again, I can go to Visual Studio and I want to clone that assignment here. So again, I can go File, Clone Repository, or if you close your solution, Clone Repository is one of the options from that window to clone repository. I want to paste in the URL here. You might want to change where this is. So again, I'm going to go and select this folder. It wants an empty folder. Okay. Or you can just, again, keep saving it in sources, repos, that's fine too. And clone that repository, it'll clone this down. So eventually you want to be able to modify this program here. And you can maybe add some lines, maybe another console write line or another comment. Tom added this new comment from his assignment. We want to save this. We want to go to GitHub and we want to post this change, updated assignment. And again, I generally want to commit and sync. At the same time, it should commit and sync this to GitHub. So then if you go to your browser to that same window, you might have to refresh it. But if you go into the sample project and look at the program.cs, your new changes should be available there. So play with that a little bit. I'll go around and help see how you're doing. So we want you to be able to grab this assignment, copy this assignment into Visual Studio, and make changes to it and push it back. And then I'll show you how to do it in VS Code in just a sec also. You pause the recording. Okay, so I'm now using Visual Code to try to do this. Now, when I go here and look at my source control here, it used to have a clone repository here, and I don't know how to get that back yet. It just showed because I already have a program opened up and editing. I'll edit here. So if someone sees how to get back to this clone repository here, let me know. But right now, since I have a project open, it just gives me commits here. So yeah, so what you do instead is you can just type into the console program what you want it to do here. Now, where's my console? Why is my console showing up? Okay, so I like to, usually with VS Code and we see tutorials, they'll have this window with the different, the outputs and the problems and here, and there should be a terminal down here for this. And again, here you would type in the git command to clone a repository. And a lot of the tutorials, in fact, the tutorials I'm providing here for VS Code will tell you these commands that you'd write here and where to type in commands for this, like down here. But so I want to actually type in a git command, and this is what a lot of people do, is just do command line stuff. I'd say git clone, and then I'd paste in the repository for this inside a terminal window that will clone the repository here. It may not open it up automatically, so I might have to say open. And generally, when you're using this, you should be opening up solutions in Visual Studio, so you get rather than just one file. And you should open up folders here. So again, I should be able to open up a folder for this. See if this will open up. C users repos. So let me open up. I think I'm looking, yeah. I think I look at where it's stored this. Yeah, it should be. Maybe it's just this one, I guess. Okay, so then I should be able to see that, edit it here. I'm a little confused because I was opening this up outside of GitHub in this same thing, the same project. From and I should be able to go to GitHub, commit these changes. I've saved these, give it some name, update from code, and commit these changes. And then sync these changes then to GitHub for that. So again, sometimes in Visual Studio Code, it seems like I haven't found ways to always do it with the user interface here. You may have to type in some clone commands, and we'll see that again when we do branching, when we talk about branching on Thursday. So, all right. So let's go back here. So again, the idea is that you can we can use GitHub. We have an account. I will create generally assignments. You will accept and work with those assignments and stuff like that. There are times where we're going to do team assignments. In fact, that will start this week. And so GitHub has a way of assigning teams. So I just specify students are in teams of 3. You'll see the assignment. You'll go to that link and you can just pick, it's very similar to, like, I don't know if there's these video games where you join the video games and there's a little, pick what team you want to be on. It's kind of reminiscent of that. So it'll show what teams there are available and who's on the teams, and you can do it. And as soon as a team fills up, it won't be on the list anymore. One thing I like about that is that if you want to get started on a project early in the week, like Thursday, if you want to do the project, I'll have it available on Thursday. We'll start it in class on Thursday. If you just want to do it on Thursday, it'll lock you in, especially for the online students. Some of you may want to get going right away there. But if you're not going to work on it until Sunday night, you can join a team on Sunday night and work on it there. So it's a nice setup. So teams are already integrated into this GitHub Classroom when we set it up. So we'll do that here. I will try again to redo these assignments. We saw today the problems are if I don't update the assignment before giving it to you, we run into some issues. And that's what's happening with participation. That's why I'm not having you do that. So by Thursday, I'll update the participation assignment and we'll have that ready to go there. And I'll make sure the update is. One of the things I have to do here is update this for the new version of .NET here. And that's what we'll see here. So in Visual Studio and in there's something called .NET 8, and we'll want .NET 8 installed on the labs. That should be installed. It may not be installed in VS Code and not for the Mac, but we'll do. I just recorded a video. I haven't posted it yet on how to install Visual Studio .NET for the Mac. And anyway, you'll have to do that for the assignment. Because assignment will be a website, a kind of complicated sample website that you'll modify and work with in Teams for that. So that's it. Let's see. So again, I'll update the participation and the assignment stuff by Thursday so that those will work hopefully then. Questions on this? All right. So again, especially if some of you did not get GitHub account set up and running, let me know. I often just sit down and work with students one-on-one through some of this. So if you have a problem, let me know. Stop by my office or Zoom with me, and we can set that up. Okay, we're gonna wrap up for the day, I think. And let me get this open in case you have any questions. Let's stop the recording.